Hello, welcome to Learning in the Making Live. My name is Linda.
And my name is Justin, and I work with Linda at Maker Ed. And we're super excited to be on our call today to begin to make some things with words.
Justin, what can we make with words?
Good question, Linda. You can make many, many different things with words. And today we're going to make some poetry. Poetry taps into the power of words to express feelings and communicate ideas and tell stories. In poetry, there are fewer rules than in other types of writing. You don't even have to follow any rules. And poetry can also help us build our wealth of words and express ourselves in really creative ways. Excuse me while I add this to our poetry.
No rules. I love that. So, what are some examples of poetry? Like, can I give you an example and you can tell me if it's a poem or not?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, from the classic hit movie Bring It On, there's Brr, it's cold in here. There must be some turtles in the atmosphere. Is that a poem? Is that poetry?
That's absolutely a poem. You can tell because even as you said it, there was like a rhythm and a bounce to the words. It almost sounded like a song. A song is poetry, the lyrics to a song, or even to a rap, or also to a lullaby. All of those things are poetry. And some poems are playful and fun, like the one that you just shared. Other ones can help you remember things and ideas. And other poems might have a different feeling, whether happy or sad, because they're expressing your feelings. So today we're just going to combine poetry with visual art to create some visual poems.
Wait, what is a visual poem? How can you see a poem?
Good question, Linda. A visual poem is a poem that uses the arrangement of words on the page to create a picture, kind of like these two examples here. In the one on the left, you can see that the waves that the sailboat is in are written in blue. You can add color, you can add breaks between lines, spell words a little bit differently. You can get playful to have the visual image interact with the meaning of the poem.
That looks super cool. But what if I'm not a very good writer? Like, writing is really hard.
I relate to that feeling, but honestly, everyone is already a really good writer because we're all writing all the time, sometimes without even knowing it. We all have experiences and stories, ideas, and feelings which we can express into writing. Every time we write a letter, for instance, we're somewhat engaged in the act of writing poetry. Plus, we're going to do some exercises right now to get our juices flowing so that we can start to write and compose our visual poem.
Oh, okay. So then how do we get started? How do we get our juices flowing?
So before we begin, we need a topic or a theme. Whenever we write, we're writing about something. So what do you think our visual poems should be about, Linda?
Okay, so you mentioned that poetry can help us express our feelings and communicate our ideas. During this time at home, I've been thinking a lot about resilience. Um, yeah, I've just been thinking a lot about resilience.
I think that's an awesome thing to write about. Could you tell me a little bit more about what resilience means to you?
Yeah, so something I've been thinking a lot about are my former students and how this is probably a really weird and strange time for them. I've also been thinking about the essential workers and everyone else who is committing to stay home so that we can keep ourselves and other people safe. And it's really hard. Like this time is really hard, and still we're getting through it. So to me, resilience is being able to adapt and continue when things are really tough. So resilience is having strength.
Great. I really like that because I feel like I've been thinking about a lot of the same things, and maybe you at home are thinking about the same things too. But you mentioned a lot of different aspects of resilience, and it sounds like a really powerful but somewhat abstract idea. Maybe to help us explore what resilience means to us, we can choose or pick an object that helps us think about resilience or represents resilience to us. Linda, do you have an object on hand or nearby that makes you think of resilience or represents resilience to you?
Yeah, so during this time, I've been gardening a lot, but something that I've noticed growing in my backyard is something that I didn't even grow, dandelions. And so that's an object that represents resilience for me. And I went outside and picked it, so let me show it to you. Look,
I'd love
a
to see the dandelion.
dandelion. And it has some flowers.
Ooh, that's so pretty.
Huh. Justin, what's an object that represents resilience to you? You.
Well, for me, this boot that I wear almost every single day, I wear both boots.
I know, I recognize it.
Reminds me a lot of resilience because I've had it for so many, many years. And you talked to me about how resilience means or has to do with strength. Like this shoe has helped protect my feet, like over miles and miles of walking and running and hiking. And it has a kind of resilience, like it's got some wear and tear to it, but it keeps going and keeps protecting my feet.
That's cool. A boot. Okay, so is our topic resilience?
Yeah, I would say our topic is resilience, and Linda and I both chose objects which represent resilience to us. For those of you who are watching along at home, maybe what's an object that makes you think of resilience? You can pause here if you want to take a minute to go and find one. So now that we have a topic, resilience, and an object, Linda's dandelion and my boot, the next step is really to build a word bank. So we're going to write down all the words that our object makes us think of.
Okay, so why are we building a word bank and how do I build one?
Good question. So for one, like words are the building blocks of poetry. So if we have a lot of different words, we can create really wonderful poems. And building a word bank is a great way to get some of our juices flowing for our poem and help us brainstorm some of the words. So it's a great way to discover new words when you begin to associate them. And it's a really great way to explore old words that you already know in new ways. The great thing about a word bank is that you can come back to it over time and add to it. You can use it to write other poems, to consult it when writing letters or journals. And the point here really is to come up with as many words as you can think of related to your object.
Oh, okay. Well, I love learning about new words and saving them for later. It makes me feel really smart. So, can I just list the words on a piece of paper?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I'm going to do. But you could also make an even more interactive word bank by writing individual words on individual pieces of paper. Or if you keep a journal or diary at home, you can add words on a blank page there.
I see. Okay, then actually, maybe I'm going to use these strips of paper to write my words because I have them handy. Okay.
Great. So what are some of the words you're going to start writing down?
One of the words that I've been thinking about and I really like the sound of it is prolific. I just like the way it sounds, prolific. Some words that also remind me of the dandelion, weeds. I think the leaves are kind of jagged.
Oh yeah, I saw those leaves look pretty jagged when you showed me the dandelion.
Yeah. I'm having a really hard time thinking of words, Justin. Are there some things that I can do to help me think of more words?
Yeah, well, how about let's do some brainstorming together. Maybe since we're using your object to help inspire some of the words, tell me a little bit about what your dandelion looks like. I know that I saw it when you showed it to me on the screen, but maybe in your words, describe it to me. And you can write down words that are coming up in your description.
Okay, well, some of the colors that I'm seeing are green. There are also some yellow flowers. There are also some like brown colors. And I know that once the flowers get really old, they become those like little palms. So they're like white puffs. Okay. I
That's
wonder what.
awesome. You've generated a lot of lists just based on what your dandelion looks like. It's a plant, and like you said, it has some puffs. So I think when I think of plants and flowers, I think about the smell of plants and flowers. What does your dandelion smell like?
Oh, it smells kind of earthy. Earthy. I don't know if that's descriptive enough, but like earthy and kind of like grassy. Very big scientific words. Grassy.
That's okay. These are poems, not scientific treaties. How about some memories you have associated with your dandelion?
Yeah, so I sometimes see them growing like in the cracks of sidewalks.
You have a particular memory of walking upon one that's growing in the cracks of sidewalks, and how did that make you feel?
It made me feel like kind of curious. It made me curious because that's not really a place where you think things can grow, and somehow like it's growing in between a sidewalk, even though I've been trying to plant tons of things in my garden and they take a lot of work and care, and here are just dandelions growing between the cracks of sidewalks.
Oh
I
wow, they really
also,
are resilient.
yeah, I also remember like picking those white puffs of a dandelion and blowing them, and then the like little puffs fly out, and they kind of look like umbrellas. But
Oh yeah,
what's a more like fancy word for umbrella? Like is
canopy.
carousel umbrella?
I don't
Care.
actually know, but we can still write it into our word bank, and like I said, you can come back to it later. If a
Yeah.
word pops into your head that you don't remember the meaning of, you can look it up later. Just add it to your bank.
Cool. I also am not sure how to spell carousel, so I just spelled it the best I could and put an SP next to it so that I can like check on the spelling later.
That's
Um,
totally fine. That's a lot of poems are about how they sound. And this is just an exercise to get us generating words. You already have a lot of words now on in your word bank, and I have a good decent amount too on my list. Maybe we can take a step back, and for those of you watching along at home, you can pause your word bank, pause making your word bank here too, and we can look over some of the words that we have. Linda, do you notice any patterns or similarities emerging from the words that you have in your word bank?
yeah, so I noticed that some of things like make me feel happy and they feel positive. They have a positive connotation, and some of the words that I have make me feel like bad or kind of feel negative. So I feel like maybe I can put my words and separate them out into things that are positive and negative.
Oh, I think that's a great idea. And that way you can really see what some of the words make you feel and which words are associated together.
Okay. So when I think of weeds, that kind of sounds like negative because weeds are things that are unwanted and they're not things that are intentionally meant to be grown. Um, Also, jagged feels like really rough to me. But the word prolific sounds like positive, like, wow, this is something that's very abundant. Um, when I think of the word green, it makes me feel good. The color green, I feel, is a very positive color. Um, Curious makes me feel good. White puffs. Um, Growing in sidewalks, though, I don't know if that's like a positive thing or a negative thing. So I think maybe I'll just put that in the middle. And earthy feels positive to me. grassy though. I don't know. I'm just gonna put it like somewhere in the middle. Yellow flowers feel positive. Brown. I really like the color brown too. It reminds me of the earth. Edible feels positive, and umbrella to me feels positive. Actually, another word that reminds me of a dandelion is prickly because the leaves at the end look like they're spiky. So I've separated my words into positive words and negative words. Justin, do you notice any kind of patterns in yours?
Yeah, so the patterns I'm noticing have less to do with the connotations of the words and more to do with how they sound and sound similar to one another. So I noticed that a lot of the words that came up in my bank kind of sound alike or rhyme. So I see that foot and soot rhyme together, or they sound alike. Wear and tear kind of sound alike, or they rhyme. Um, Leather, because my shoe is made out of leather, and weather, because my shoe always goes through different types of weather. Those two things rhyme. Another thing I'm noticing is that boot, which is my object, and foot, they don't exactly rhyme, but they sound similar. And on the page, to me, they look pretty similar, like they're spelled in a similar way. They're one letter off from one another.
How funny that they look the same, but they don't sound the same. The English language is such a funny language.
It really, really is. And I think that we can play with some of the funniness of it, or of any of the languages you're using at home to write your poem. So now that we have our word bank and a good kind of like bank of material to write our poem, the next step really is to draw out the shape of our poem, the shape that it's going to take, because our poem is going to appear in the shape of our object. So in my case, it's going to appear like this boot, and in Linda's case, it might appear like the dandelion. So what you can do is start by drawing your object or outlining your object.
Okay. So I'm going to draw my dandelion just by sight, and I'm going to try my best. So I know there's a stem.
That's great, Linda. I don't trust my artistic abilities enough to draw my boot by sight, so I'm just going to put it on this piece of cardboard and trace it. I'm going to trace my boot on the cardboard because this brown cardboard sort of reminds me of my boot.
That makes sense. So you're using your cardboard because it looks like it's the same color.
Yeah, and one of the words I wrote down was brown because my shoe is brown. And the leather that I mentioned earlier is sort of this like tough, resilient material. And the cardboard is also kind of tough and resilient. I can't really like break it if I just use a little bit of strength.
I'm trying some jagged leaves because that's one of the things that I described for the jagged leaves.
Oh, wow. They do look really pointy and prickly.
Don't they? They look dangerous. They look dangerous. But I know dandelions are edible. I've just never tried eating any. Have you ever eaten dandelion?
I have never eaten a dandelion, so I wouldn't know what it tastes like. I wonder if you had tasted your dandelion, if you would come up with more words to add into your bank.
Maybe. Should I try it? Should I try eating my dandelion?
Sure, as long as you don't dare me to taste my boot. I'm pretty sure it won't smell good.
Well, we'll see. Okay, so I'm kind of done with my dandelion.
Great. So our next step, now that we have the outline of our poem, our next step is really to compose our poems. So the way I'm going to approach this is I'm just going to fill the outline of my boot with lines of poetry. the lines at the top of the poem up here will be pretty short, and the lines at the bottom of my poem will be pretty long because to fit the shape of the poem. So that's sort of like the constraint that I'm working with. And the other thing I'm going to do is refer back to my word bank, and maybe I'm going to play with some of these rhyming word sets and see if I can add them into my poem. How do you think you're going to begin?
Okay, so I think I'm going to actually first start writing on some paper first. I don't trust my artistic and like word sense to be able to just go ahead and start writing on my dandelions. So I'm gonna draft on paper first.
Great. I think that's a great idea. Poems are like any other made thing. It takes a process to make them, and you can always draft or iterate and prototype your poem like Linda's about to do.
Okay, so I'm going to use the words that we came up with earlier to just kind of like help me with drafting my lines.
Okay.
Something that I know that a lot of poems use are repetition, like they repeat the same words over and over. So I'm going to try doing some of that at the beginning. Something like over here, over there, weeds, weeds, everywhere. And I said something about it being in sidewalks. So I'm going to say something like in the sidewalk.
I really like that you're doing some of this thinking out loud. That way you can really explore how the words sound. And if you're watching along at home, you don't have to write in silence. You can also sort of talk out loud to get some of your ideas out.
Okay, so in the sidewalk, in the garden bed, I pull it out. But it grows again. Okay, so some of the other things that remind me of the dandelion are the leaves. So maybe I'm going to write some lines using the words I use, like jagged and prickly, and maybe the green. So I'm going to go jagged, prickly, green leaves. But I've also heard that they're edible, so I might write another line that says the positive things like edible. And supposedly they're supposed to be really nutritious for you, so I'm gonna be like edible, nutritious. I don't know if I spelled this correctly, so I'm just gonna write it and then put an SPO in the corner, and then maybe I can go back and check my spelling later. Edible, nutritious leaves. I know I put down yellow flowers, but I want my poem to sound a little bit like more fancy. So I'm gonna try to think of more descriptive words that's not just yellow flowers. So I know they're like kind of small. And if they're yellow, what else is yellow and round? I think the sun is, right? The sun is yellow and round. So should I use the word sun?
Yeah, and I also really like how you're using words in your word bank to spark new ideas and images for your poem.
You know, I think I like the word sunshine even better than sun. So I might say something like yellow drops of sunshine. Yep, that sounds fancy to me.
It sounds fancy to me too.
And I said that I really like the word prolific. Prolific means like there's abundance of it. And I know that when you like blow on the white dandelion, that all of those like white puffy seeds fly everywhere. So I'm going to say something like blowing prolific puffs of white carousels.
That's great. It looks like you have a really full draft. Do you think you want to start adding your draft into your image?
Yeah, so I see that you already wrote yours inside your boot. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to write my words around the shape of my dandelion, and I'm going to write the negatives on the bottom. And as it goes up towards the flowers, I think I want to start changing it to more positive descriptions.
Oh, great. I think that's a really awesome idea. While you're doing that, I would love to share my poem with you if you'd like to hear it.
I would love to hear your poem.
Great. So this is my poem. I decided to write it as an ode to my boot. So here it goes. Everywhere I go, you follow. Under my heel, I always feel the soft protection of your firm brown leather, keeping out the danger of every kind of wild weather. Your friendship lasts forever, despite wear and tear. Dear boot, you are part of my foot from heel to toe.
I love that. I love that you were talking to your boot. That's what your poem was, is that like you're talking to your boot and saying really nice things to it. And that shows a lot of gratitude for something that's not alive. But I also notice a lot of rhymes in there, and I always think rhymes are so much fun.
Yeah, I was really trying to work, like I said, from my word bank and the rhymes that I noticed there to work them into the poem. And I was thinking about how the rhymes sort of tie the poem together. So that's where I drew, you probably can't see it all that well, shoelaces that tie up my boot that go through the ends of the lines where the words are rhyming. Where are
Super
you at
cool.
with your poem?
Yeah, so I was able to write some things around the shape of my dandelion. Let me show you. So this is what my looks like. You can't really see the words of it, but I can read it to you. And this gets read from the bottom, or I'm going to start reading it from the bottom. Over here, over there, weeds, weeds, everywhere, in the sidewalk, in the garden bed. I pull it up, but it grows again. Jagged, prickly, green bitter leaves, edible and nourishing leaves. Smells of fresh earth. Yellow drops of fuzzy sunshine. Blowing prolific puffs of white carousels. Always growing, 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 no matter what. So this is what I have so far.
Linda, I think it's really beautiful. I feel like I can totally see some of your thinking that was happening in your earlier draft kind of come to light in your poem. And I also really like that as a reader on your poem, you could kind of read it starting from the bottom up, which is your intention. But if you were to come to the poem not knowing how you, Linda, wrote it, you could read it from top to bottom, and maybe it has a different bit of a meaning. Yeah.
Wow, I didn't even think of like what would happen if people read it from the top. I bet it would feel really different.
I also think that in your poem, you are using a lot of images of colors, which I really like, and that came from how you were looking at your dandelion. And I'm wondering if maybe at a certain point down the road, you can add some color into your poem to make it to play with the idea of those colors.
Definitely. So something that I did was I actually crushed up some of my dandelion leaves, and I'm hoping that it would like be able to be used some watercolor. So we'll see if it works. I have some crushed up here and I'll just finger paint. Whoa, it totally works.
Oh, wow. I love that you're incorporating your object into the poem about your object.
So I wonder if it would work with the flowers too. I don't have any flowers crushed up, so I wouldn't know. But I wonder if we can just be picking things outside and making watercolors
I
with
think that's a
natural
really great
materials.
idea. I also think that might be another great idea for another episode of Learning in the Making Live.
So if you want us to show you how to make some natural paints, maybe tweet at us and let us know. Otherwise, this is it. This is all you get. Me trying to finger paint with leaves.
Great. Thank you, Linda, for doing that process with me. And thank you, everyone at home, for writing your poems. We would be really, really excited if you were to share your poems with us, as always. Or if you don't want to share them with us, at least share them with a friend or a family member, because they are a great way for you to think through and process some of your feelings. For instance, what we did today with resilience. The last thing I'm going to leave you with is, if you want to continue doing poems, that you could dive a little bit deeper into poetry with some of these websites. So Poetry for Kids is the poetry playground of a children's author, Ken Nisbet, and it has a rhyming dictionary and a bunch of examples of poems, and lists of poetry types and games and activities. And then Power Poetry is a website that also allows you to bring poems, check out different kinds of poems. As always, we want to thank you for joining us today, and please share your poem with us, #MakerEd@home, #ShapePoem, and please join us next week for another installment of letter writing and pop-up card making.
And as always, we'll be learning in the making.